How did the final Starcruiser voyages sell out in 8 hours? Let's discuss. Welcome to Princess and Scoundrel, where we take you along our scrappily ever after from Fantasyland to Tatooine and everything in between. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Steven.
And I don't have as much pep in my step for this episode.
We're definitely pumping ourselves up, right?
This is the episode that I think I have forever dreaded since we started this podcast.
We were pretty fortunate that there was this time between the episodes because, you know, we just had our the best episode ever, or
Starcruiser voyage.
And we were so happy, so optimistic about everything.
Yeah. And then on Thursday, May 18th, Disney announced that Starcruiser is closing forever at the end of September.
Which is nuts because this has kind of been our thing for the last 2 years.
Really been our thing. A little bit of an identity crisis happening over here. And so they announced that Starcruiser was closing, and they also announced that the new bookings were paused for a week, and they were going to reopen on Friday, May 26th. We're recording this on Saturday, May 27th, and I will tell you, I had none of what happened in the last 2 days on my bingo card at all.
It was a whirlwind for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about the closure a little bit, because we had a live stream, and if you're just listening to the episodes or you're just watching our episodes on YouTube, you didn't see the live stream where we had Dano from the Dano channel on, Peter and Kitra from Ordinary Adventures, and we just talked about the closure, our initial thoughts on it, because it was still pretty fresh at that point. And then we talked about our May 3rd voyage because we were all together.
Yeah. Well, and again, it was weird because we wanted to have them on to reminisce of that great time, and just the timing of it was. Now we were talking about,
also talk about it closing. So if you want to hear more of our thoughts on the closure, go check the live stream. But what we wanted to talk about is just the booking process in general and how that led up to this craziness that happened for this last set of dates.
Yeah.
And the reason that they paused booking for a week is because there were bookings all the way through the end of the year. People were booked on voyages from October to December, and they announced that they were closing it at the end of September. So that gave people a week that were in those last 3 months of the year to rebook and figure out how to shift things forward.
Which was they kind of had that leg up on their pick of the last voyages per se.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what happened. The last day ended up getting sold out before they even sold them. Last day was sold out.
Yeah.
Our last voyage.
Last voyage, the September 28th voyage, sold out, completely unavailable before any new bookings were able to be made. Which stinks. I would have really liked to have been on the last voyage and cried for 45 hours straight. But that's okay. It is what it is at this point. But let's talk about the booking process overall and kind of the evolution and maybe the pros and cons of each of them, because I think that can really be telling of what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So when Starcruiser was first announced the bookings were going to go on sale, they actually did it in a really structured way. So
and you're talking about when they first opened.
First opened. This was back in October of 2021. They told us we're going to do this in a phased approach, and it's going to be for affiliated groups. So the first dibs went to Club 33 in Golden Oaks, and they had a day or two to book. Then they opened it to, I think, DVC and annual pass holders, and they had a few days to book. And then I want to say maybe there was a Disney Visa, a couple days in there. And then after a week, general bookings opened.
Yeah.
So they had these different windows, and I booked people in a few of those windows, and everything was, long wait times, all of this stuff. When the annual pass holder ones, because that was the first one that I think that I had booked, when the phone lines opened for that, and I was calling beforehand and trying to get all the information I could, the system that they implemented was just bonkers. So you would pick up the phone and you would call, and you would be on hold for hours. And it was typically like 2 hours that you were on hold. And then once somebody picked up the phone, we'll call them a gatekeeper. The gatekeeper would tell you, you'd say, "Hi, I'm calling to book Galactic Starcruiser. I'm a travel agent." And they would say, "Great, let me get all of your information." They would get all of your information. They'd say, "Okay, let me go put you in the queue." "Oh, the queue's closed. You're going to have to hang up and call back." And I did a TikTok reel about it that very visually explains what happens. But basically, you call, you wait 2 hours. They say, "No dice." You hang up, you call again, you wait 2 hours. They say, "There's no room in the queue." You hang up, you call again. I did that for, I think, 11 hours straight that first day before finally they were like, "Oh, hey, there's spots open." Because what would happen is they would say, "Oh, the queue was open 5 minutes ago, but it just closed a minute ago. I'm so sorry about your luck."
And you really had to just get lucky of when you called back, basically, right?
Yeah.
So,
It was
because they didn't have it like any rhyme or reason, when the queue was open.
right.
It was just when people could take, or the Disney call takers can take people.
Right. And so you would get into the actual Star Cruiser queue and you could wait hours. And sometimes there would be wait music, and then sometimes it would be complete silence. And sometimes you would have wait music and then it would be silence. And so people just
And it was terrifying to not hear anything. Because you're like, hopefully I'm not just wasting my time on this like dead,
Am I in the right queue? Am I even on hold? Is my phone on? And then calls drop and
I like how,
nothing.
so the listeners can't see us, but the viewers can see that we're gesturing.
You can tell how old we are.
Because we're holding it like an old school
like a banana phone.
But like, I know we're doing this and it's just making me laugh. Sorry.
Not the hand. Is that what they do now?
Sorry, go back.
Sorry, apologies. But you could have a call drop. Anyway, it was brutal. The very first day that I booked people, I was on hold for 11 hours. And it was very unfun. Each day, the next day, enough people complained and they were like, "What do you think you're doing? There is no way that is in any way fair." And I think enough people complained that I want to say it was overnight. They got rid of that. And so if you were trying to call in, it was just circuits are busy, call again. Circuits are busy. I'm trying to be cool now and hold my phone like this. Circuits are busy, call again. And so you're just sitting there and just redialing. I think it was hundreds of phone calls on our phones throughout the day to try to get through. And then over time, it got easier and easier. Once the general bookings first opened up for the very first voyages, it was long days of just redialing and getting through and getting people booked. But after a few days and getting everybody booked, it was easy again. Like the hold times would go down.
And I think at the beginning, the hardest part, because everybody wanted to be on close to the first one.
Right.
Everybody wanted the Grand Captain Suites or the Galaxy Suites, or they wanted
Captain's
Table.
Table.
So it was like there was a lot of things that people were seeking out. So sometimes they would push out their trips because they had availability of these items. But those were the first things to go. That was like the desirables, like either the first voyage or these suites or the
Captain's Table. But you had a starting point and you pushed out from there. So the first voyage was March 1st, and we could book all the way through September 30th. We had what is that? 5 months, 6 months, 7 months? That's 7 months of booking that we could do.
Yeah.
I think. Math is not my strong suit. That's 7 months. But everybody wanted the beginning, and then it tapered off towards the end. Then fast forward to, it was March. It was when we were on our voyage. It was March 4th, I believe. We were on our very first voyage on Starcruiser, and that's when the rest of the dates open up. So I really don't know how that went, because shout out to my agency owner and sister-in-law, Cheryl. I was like, if the rest of the year opens up, here's everybody I need booked.
The thing is like most of those voyages were pretty full, right?
Yeah.
And so there was people that were waiting for the next, dates,
Right.
because that was when it was going to like towards Christmas time and, New Year's and the holiday seasons, stuff like that.
That's a good point. When Starcruiser bookings first opened, it was booked out solid for the first 4 to 5 months. And then you started seeing some open up as people like shifted around. But it was pretty packed.
Yeah.
And then there were people that were like, I want to go around school holidays or a birthday or something like that.
There was more flexibility to it.
So the Q4 dates, I don't really know how that went because we were on day 2 on our Starcruiser voyage. I do know that Cheryl spent 2 days on the phone though, getting everybody booked. And I don't think there was any gatekeepers or anything like that at that point either. So then we're like, okay, so March is when October through December opened up. Now everybody's waiting for 2023 dates to open up.
Yeah.
They gave, I think, like a day's heads up. I think they told us on March 3rd that, hey, if you're an annual pass holder, you can book on the 3rd and everybody else can book on the 4th. But they told us like that day that it was happening. And it was like, you gave us such a heads up for the first round of booking. How come you didn't give us any heads up for the second round of booking? Yeah. And that kind of was the MO for the rest of the windows.
Yeah.
So,
and I think the thing is like after that, because Starcruiser was so new, we didn't really know like how the booking process was, because a typical like a Disney trip, you're doing park pass reservations, you're doing, your resort, and then you're maybe doing a shuttle from the airport to your resort,
lots of variables.
Resort, the Starcruiser was very different, where it was like, which weekend, which voyage do you want? It's going to be a 3-day thing.
Yeah.
Then what dinner you want?
It's like a multiple choice quiz.
But it was very similar to a cruise. And that's where it was kind of confusing to us, is because seeing the cruise method of booking people would have been a probably easier way to handle it than the way they were handling it. Because they were handling it kind of like a normal resort, hotel type of thing, and then doing reservations of, all your activities instead of doing a cruise or a cruise trip, or a cruise booking with excursions being the activities type of thing. So it was like weird the way they did it.
Right. Oh, and there's this huge uproar of like, why can't you book this online? It's like, well, those booking agents, they have to book through like 6 or 7 different systems. Like that's not easy to automate into one user interface. And like, no offense, Disney, but your IT is not your strong suit.
And at the beginning, it would take quite some time to get even one room booked.
Yeah.
It would take some time.
It would. And especially if you were not a travel agent and you were just calling in to book and you're like, I know I want this date. You have to be prepared to know like what room type you want, what dinner times you want, dietary restrictions, celebrations, mobility restrictions, all these extra things, depending on when you want to book. If you want to book your extras, you had to know all of that stuff. And if you didn't, you had to make decisions right then and there, because they don't do courtesy holds. Like, you book it, right? So it was a lot, and it was very different. And I think I'm so used to booking them now that like you saying all this stuff, I'm like, oh yeah, it was really weird. And I was constantly like changing my form for getting information, because I'm like, okay, well, what's your big priority? Do you really want captain's table? You just really want your date? Where are we with this? Is it your cabin type?
And I think that was the thing. It's like from the first one to the second, release of days, Disney was also changing like what information they needed, what they would ask, what they needed, what they didn't need, and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
and just priorities changed, because like it wasn't as mad of a crush of people trying to book the Q4 dates in 2022.
Yeah.
So it was just, things were different. Like when Starcruiser first opened up, Disney told us, ask for 3 dates that people are prepared to sail on, because their first 2 choices may be unavailable, so you can go to the 3rd. So we'll get back to that piece in a second. But so then there was the waiting game of, when is 2023 going to open? And it haunted me for months, because the rest of 2022 opened in March. Walt Disney World Resorts opened in June. I want to say it was like June 8th. And so I'm like, is this it? No, this is not it. So then
I mean, you were prepared.
I was
Like you had
ready.
like, hey, if you're ready to go, let me know.
I had
And
my
so
list.
you were waiting.
I
You were
was
just
ready.
any kind of wind that Disney would pass, you were
Gross.
you were ready.
I'm ready. So June passes, my anxiety heightens. July passes, my anxiety soars. August just about passes. My anxiety has breached the atmosphere and is on the Halcyon. I don't know what galaxy that's in, but it is that far away. I'm like, we cannot be, because at the time, your final payment was due 90 days beforehand. I was like, if somebody's booking for January, it would have been January 2nd was the first voyage of 2023. If somebody's booking for January 2nd, their final payment is going to be due October 1st. And we're at like the last week of August. I'm like, that gives them 5 weeks to really decide they're going to go on this thing and then commit with their final payment and be locked in.
Yeah.
I was like, what is happening? I truly was freaked out, and I call Starcruiser like every day, usually multiple times a day for different things. And so I would ask every time. And then finally they opened 2023 dates and they didn't announce it. They didn't tell anybody that they opened it. And I happened to be calling in for 60-day stuff. And I was like, hey, it was the joke of the summer was like 2023 dates open. And they're like, yeah, actually we can book you. And so they booked us. And then I started going through clients and they were like, actually, we're only supposed to be booking Club 33 and Golden Oaks, I think. And they're like, you can book tomorrow or 2 days from now or something. I was like, okay. And then we called back an hour or two later and we're like, is it still only for that? And they're like, well, I mean, maybe. And we're like, well, can you book it? And you had to ask and you had to keep asking and they'd be like, okay, we can book you. And
I think what it was, they didn't announce it.
No.
And I think they were still doing off that original group.
The affiliated groups. Yeah.
So they were giving each of them a chance, but they weren't having that flux that they were anticipating.
And they also weren't, but they were doing it in a tiered approach like that, but they weren't telling anybody
and I think
that they were even doing it. So it was like nobody knew to call in.
Exactly. And I think that's what is you were doing it, but no one knew. So you weren't having that influx of people calls, or those calls. So it was weird.
We can all agree that Starcruiser has had marketing issues and them announcing when new dates were going on sale was no exception to that. So that was 2023 and they only opened up January through end of September again. And so we were able to knock those out. But again, they just never told us when the dates were going to go on sale. It was weird. But by that point, my system and my way of booking people had gotten a lot more efficient. I was miles ahead of where I had been a year before when Starcruiser bookings had been opened up. And that process was pretty smooth. It was like, got everybody booked and I was like, oh man, like that was, I can do this. This is okay. I'm good. I'm decent at this.
Yeah.
And then they opened up, it was in March, I believe, of 2023. They opened up the rest of the year for 2023. So they opened up October through December.
So they had opened up the rest of the year before they started doing the discounts.
Yes. So there were some discounts. There were some DVC discounts that they had announced, but it was for a very limited time in like January, February. And then that was all the discounts they had announced. And then I believe it was in March, maybe it was February, when the rest of the calendar, the 2023 calendar opened up. And I booked people on that. And then I want to say it was end of March or beginning of April is when they started announcing like the annual pass discounts, the DVC exclusive cruise, the cast member discounts.
And see, and this is where I'm going to go on a little rant right here.
Okay.
Um, because we've kind of talked about it. We've discussed it in different places, different ways. But this is where, again, I'm still in that denial phase of this news. But I don't feel they gave them the chance, because as soon as they did that DVC discount, and like we saw, there was an influx of people like inquiring about it.
Yeah.
People are going to wait for discounts. So when it was just regular cost, you saw the numbers start to go down.
Yeah.
And then they introduced another discount. I think it was cast members after that.
I think it was cast members and annual pass holders were around the same time.
So then you saw APs go get discounts. Was it APs? Mm-hmm. And then Disney Visa.
Because remember, it was annual pass, because the annual pass was from like mid-April to end of June, and we had already booked the May 3rd voyage at full price, and it was like all the other voyages around it could be discounted, and it was like
because they saw that one was already sold out, that they were like, nah, screw you guys.
It was not sold out, but it was very highly booked.
Yeah.
They're like, we all don't need the discount. We've got your money. So.
But then they did the Visa, and it's like, okay, we saw an influx again.
Yeah. So they did the Disney Visa discount. I want to say mid-April, towards the end of April. I don't know. Time has no meaning. Like when I book these things, I was doing paperwork earlier today, and I was like, man, I can't believe it's already the end of July. I was like, oh my God, it's the end of May.
That's the weird thing when you work in like this type of work, is you're always working in the future. You're never working really like in the current.
Yeah. Like I've been typing 2023 on my computer since last summer.
Yeah.
So
rant over. You could
rant
continue.
over. But yes, we did absolutely. I noticed specifically peaks and valleys when there were discounts announced and when there wasn't. But so the last one they did was the Disney Visa discount, and that went through dates into September. They didn't extend it into October. And then.
So that meant those voyages were already starting to fill up because they were discounted.
Yeah, because they were discounted. And we took advantage of that. Yeah. We jumped on.
Oh, and then there was blackout dates.
And then they
during that time, there was blackout dates. So
they were not initially planned blackout dates. So typically what would happen is when they would open a calendar, if you went and looked at the calendar as soon as dates became available, you would see 1 to 2 blackout dates in there. And it looks like it's sold out. It's just they're not available. But what they were is they were dark voyages where they would do rehearsals and different maintenance and things like that they can't do in the 3-hour turnover in between guests on each voyage. Yeah. So they did that, and then they blocked out randomly a bunch of different dates between July and September. So July and September were pretty scarce to begin with. Then they discounted them. So those voyages were filling up. And rightly so, because that's kind of the low season for like going on a Disney trip anyway. So makes sense why they did that. And then May 18th happened. And they announced the closure. And like I said, they allowed a week for people to rebook from October to December to any of the existing
That's 3
voyages.
Months.
3 months of voyages. And we don't know how much they were sold out or anything like that, but they were incentivized with a discount to rebook their date. And that process was lengthy.
It was a very nice discount.
It was a very nice discount. It was a very lengthy process to rebook. I think each of them would take me about an hour to do. So that was on top of having to like grieve and be sad about the Starcruiser news. I had to go rebook everybody. Yeah. And then we just prepared for.
But so within that week, that last voyage got sold out. And I think that was like the most gutting thing, I guess, for us. And again, we're no one special, but the fact that we loved it so much, like we wanted to be on, like we were, we hoped that we would be able to be on that last one. And it was sold out before we could even get to it.
Yeah.
And it was just like, man, like, we're not going to be able to say goodbye on the last day.
Yeah.
And I think that was like, again, it was just that grief. Like we were still trying to grieve it. Like, we had such a great time just last week, and now we're having to like start thinking about saying goodbye.
Right.
And we're trying to figure out like, okay, what's going to happen? What is this booking window going to look like?
Right. So spent all week booking or
Rebook.
getting prepped. So yeah, spent the week rebooking and getting people prepped that wanted to go. And so when you have a list, you have to prioritize, right? So the way I prioritized my list was anybody that had signed up that wanted to go on the 2023 voyage next year, because we said we were going to make it an annual thing. So I had people that had signed up either for 2023 or for just any dates in 2024 when it opened up. So they've been on my list the longest. They've, been loyal to me. They're up there.
Yeah.
And then anybody else that came in was under that. And I did the same thing that I did with when it very first opened up. I said, I need at least 3 dates or date ranges or preferences or something that I can work with. I don't know what this is going to look like, but give me 3 dates. I feel like that's safe.
Yeah.
Give me your dining times, your dietary restrictions, your mobility restrictions. What are you celebrating? Give me everything. I need all the names. And it was tedious to do this. Like, my process is efficient. Yes. Is it perfect? No. There's still a lot of manual work in it, but typically it's fine. But what I would have to do is people would fill in the form. They would maybe say like, I want to book for 5. I don't have 5 names. Or their voyage date preference would be like the last voyage.
And Disney needs, if you're doing 5, they need 5 names.
They need 5 names. And so I would have to go back to them. I would put them in my system, kick off the credit card portal, reply to them and say, here's all the information you gave me, but here's the information I need you to provide me. I need 5 names if you're wanting 5 people.
Yeah.
I need, date ranges. I need these things. You say captain's table is an absolute deal breaker for you. Do you really mean that? Because you were probably not all the suites were pretty much gone
before.
And all of captain's table was pretty much gone.
And I think that one of the things too is like, I don't remember if I helped on the very first booking window.
You were not. Surprise. Steven's also a travel agent.
But no, I don't think I was there for the first window to help you.
You had not signed up as a travel agent because I don't think we realized I needed help. We should have realized early on I needed help.
Later on, I hopped on too and was, that ghost writer in the back helping you, get these people booked. But, again, it was just getting all that information. It was very helpful, right? Having that information, at the ready to be able to book people. But I think the thing too was through all these windows at the beginning, the advisors on Disney side, they weren't too knowledgeable or they were, but they weren't like as efficient as they had gotten towards the end.
Right.
So and then they would have help. So the new person that would come in, they weren't booking Starcruiser. Right. So you could call in and you may get a Starcruiser or a person that would book Starcruiser often. And then I could call and I would get someone that wasn't booking Starcruiser often.
Yeah.
So they were like normal Disney or customer service at Disney.
Right.
And so they could get through it, but not as with efficiency as someone that you had gotten maybe a week before.
Right.
But yeah, there was one of those things where it was like, it was so nice to have that information that you had gathered, because when they would ask the questions, I was like, boom, but it was easy. It was easy for me.
You could give information
like all
before
your trials and tribulation. I benefited from it. So
well, because I got it down to a science to where anytime I call in and they're like, oh, give me the confirmation number. I was like, I'll give you the confirmation number. I'll give you the lead guest. I'll give you my credentials. Like, I know all of I know your first 5 questions you're going to ask before we even open that reservation. Yeah. And so I devised my form and the way it reads out.
And I think that was a funny thing is because, you taught me your ways, the ways of it. So there was points where I was like,
ways of the Sarah.
Yeah.
Not the Sasha.
I was anticipating these questions. And I'm like, let's go. Like, I know the next question you're going to ask. Like, let's go. I'm ready.
So, yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I booked a couple of them. So I knew what to do. But yeah, so the way we prioritize is people that had been on my list before the closure, they got top priority. And then anybody else that came through, provided that I had everybody's information. There were people that didn't give me credit cards or didn't give me any dates or said like Captain Sable, like I had missing information. And so I would have to say, I need you to stay ready to book. So I was working every night this week until probably midnight or later, just making sure that everything was ready. And so when
the big day came,
I mean, we prepared, like I ordered groceries.
and in that, again, this is the prep. Disney didn't tell us like if there was going to be a
gatekeeper,
Club 33, a gatekeeper, any of the process. They don't share any of that.
No. And I asked every time I called, and I called lots of times this last week, as I always do. And I asked, how's it going to go? Are we going to have a gatekeeper? What's the best number to call? Tell me what I need to do to make this the most efficient. Are you going to have reinforcements? And they did. I heard they brought in 100 people to help with this. And they're not people that are used to booking Starcruiser on top of their Starcruiser team. So the phone lines open at 7 a.m. Eastern, and instantly circuits are busy.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to get through, there's other avenues of getting through. You can try to get through the travel agent line. You can try to get through the main reservation line, all of these things. So eventually we get in the queue, and I guess I'll talk about my perspective with this, because I can speak to what I experienced. You can speak to what you experienced. And then, we had friends and support too. But for me, at least, when I did get through to the queue, I was waiting for, I think, 30 minutes, and my call drops. And there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
And then I get through again into the queue. And once you get it, so what was happening is you would get to essentially a gatekeeper that would kind of qualify you. And I'd say, I'm a travel agent. They're like, who are you trying to book? And I'm like, I got a couple. I got some.
Yeah.
They would say, okay, let me get you into the queue. And then you sat in the actual Starcruiser queue for a while. So I think it was hours and hours of waiting in the queue. And when I finally did get through to get somebody, I did get a Starcruiser, like, a Jedi Master on the Starcruiser booking specialists. And we're going through the first one, about to take payment for it, and my call drops. And my heart drops also. And I'm just like, typically, and every time I call in, I say, you've got my phone number, right? And, read them my phone number and everything. And usually they call back in like 2 to 3 minutes. And then 5 minutes goes by and nothing. And then 10 minutes goes by and nothing. And I'm like, I have to get back in the queue, right?
And I just from my end of it, there was so much tension in the air, just because we were trying to get people booked, that if that would have happened, I don't know how I would have reacted, because that is just like a punch in the gut. You to be through, you to get to somebody and start booking somebody and dropping a call and then not getting that call right away.
I was like, do I tie up my phone line and try to get back in the queue? Because at that point they had closed off going through the main reservation line, or they closed it off and they opened it back up or something. It was wild. It was madness. There was no method or right way to do anything. So we just threw everything against the wall. So I'm back on the phone with a gatekeeper. And she was like, I honestly don't even know what to do with you right now. And I was like, ugh. The other line rings. It's
immediately, bye, go.
I was like, I have to go. And then I was terrified, because I don't know if you know this, but if you work at Apple in the UI division, please fix this, because if you're on a phone call and somebody else is calling you, it says end and accept, send a voicemail, or something else, like hold and accept or something. If you say, oh, I have another call, I got to go, and they say, okay, bye, and they hang up on you, where it said end and accept becomes the reject button. So I was terrified.
No, you hang up.
I was, yeah, right?
Or
just stay on the phone. You say something, I'm just going to hang up on you. I was terrified that the Starcruiser specialist, that I was going to lose her. And I was like, oh my God. Finally, I get back on. They're like, I was talking for like 5 minutes and then my phone rang. She was like, and it was a new person. She was like, I was like, how do you think I felt? And so we get back. The way it works, there was a lot of questions online. The way it works for travel agents is, because it's different, right? If you're calling in and you're trying to book your own voyage, all you care about is your trip. And so you get your trip booked. It should not take that long, right? In theory. But when you're a travel agent, you're given a maximum of 90 minutes. And you can do as much as you can in that 90 minutes. And then you have to disconnect and you have to either get put back in the queue or you have to hang up and call back.
And on this one I learned on one of my, because again, when you're booking people, you know, you start to chat with the advisors and stuff. And I kind of learned that before they had implemented this 90-minute thing, they had, you could be on the phone with them for however long. But then there was people that were just on for excessive amount of time, especially towards the end of the night. They won't necessarily hang up with you, but with this 90-minute rule, they can say, like, you know, they're able to cut it off, because they were saying sometimes people would call like at the very end of the night and it would go, you know, multiple hours after.
Yeah. But with Starcruiser, it's always been the 90-minute rule for travel agents.
This is like past, you know, Disney hit, like they've learned from the past. Yeah. But that's kind of where it came from of doing that 90-minute. And which I thought it was interesting.
It is. No, and there is. And there's always, if there's a rule, there's a reason. And sometimes they don't enact that rule. Like if there's something like when the hurricanes caused cancellations, or with the rebookings, like I was on the phone for hours and hours trying to get people rebooked.
I kind of feel like it's
only when it's necessary.
Yeah, I think when it's like, so you don't consume all of the time.
Right.
So if it's something that they need to get the task done, they'll go over. Yeah. But if it's to be fair
to everybody, and I get it fully. Like I did not go into yesterday or any of these like thinking, oh, well, I'll get in first thing in the morning and I'll just tie that phone line up all day. Like I know how it works. But you are limited to what you can get done in that time. And it depends on who you get, and it depends on what's available. By the time we finally got through, most of August and September are completely gone.
Yeah.
And most people wanted to be there in August and September. And there's nothing to do. I can't book people in June within a 30-day window and charge $8,000 or $6,000.
And it's funny because when you were talking about like having the windows open, because, you know, we have our monitors, you know, for me, and now let me speak from my perspective is, you know, we have the monitors up, we have the calendar that they update it pretty spot on. Like once it gets sold, like you're not going to have it like immediately, but it's probably like every 2-3 minutes it updates and it's going to be correct. And have that open. We have the guests, you know, we have their information, the forms. Yeah. And then we have
like our CRM tool.
Yeah, the CRM tool. So it's like you have all these information, and then, you know, have my little notepad, so that way I'm quick. I'm not having to waste time. And then I'm watching the calendar, and as I'm, you know, on call waiting, you know, on hold, you know, in that queue, you're just seeing a day disappear. And it's, you know, your anxiety starts going up.
Yeah.
You start freaking out. You're like, oh crap, am I going to be able to get through? And, you know, then again, you're hearing, we're messaging each other like, hey, have you gotten through? You know, we talked to other TA.
You're upstairs and I'm downstairs doing this. So we're like,
well, it's just so that way we're not because when we're actually on the phone, having that in the same room, we're talking over each other. Yeah. So we separate ourselves to different rooms, but, you know, we're talking to other TAs and like, hey, are you able to get through? You know, what are you hearing? Because again, when you're listening to that hold music, sometimes it's soothing. Sometimes it's like, you know, the death, like you're just like, please, like I want to speak to a person. And then like when that loop ends and it goes to silence, really, you're like, quiet. Please don't hang up on me. And, you know, you're just kind of babying that phone because you don't want it to like something to happen where you lose connection. Um, but yeah, I mean, then you start going through the process. I ended up hitting a gatekeeper, and they
You
put
didn't
me.
hit a gatekeeper.
Well,
You
no,
got to a gatekeeper.
I got to a gatekeeper. I got in the queue. Started booking people, and I think it was kind of because again, that person was not a normal Star Cruiser, and it was a question of like, how much do you want? And again, I knew that we have the 90 minutes. How much you want to book, or like how much do you have? And I was like, I got a lot. Let's go. Like, well, how much? And I'm like, I'm gonna use all my time. I gave him, he was like, no, well, like how much? And I gave him the number, and he's like, oh, okay. And just like, yeah, I told you,
Like,
I'm
let's
gonna,
go.
we're wasting time, buddy. And so again, you start giving names and you start booking people. And this one was different for me. And I don't know if we had prior knowledge, but they eliminated a lot of questions that they were asking because they were going to ask, or they were going to call the guests later. Like dinner was the biggest one where I was like, whoa, you didn't ask about dinner. And like, oh, we're not going to do that this time.
Yeah. And they weren't linking to my Disney experience either.
So it was like way faster, like trying to keep up, it was, and that's why I was like, it immediately clicked. That's why they were selling them out so fast, because you're basically just giving the names of the guests,
taking payment.
Yeah. Yeah. There was other questions to ask, but it was very minimal. Yeah. Like it was more just like they're not having to schedule anything. So it was just taking information, getting information and booking them.
Right.
So like that was the biggest change. So I was like, oh, we're having to keep up now. Yeah. So boom, we're starting knocking people out. But again, that the fact that the days were going so fast is what made, like, that was the hurdle, because as you're getting to people down your list, some people had hard dates, and for whatever, they just couldn't make it.
Yeah, you can't drop everything to go on a vacation.
Yeah. So it was like some people had hard dates. So, you get to that person, hard date, that this is what it had to be. Those dates weren't available. So we have to go to the next person. I think for me, where I was like, I knew this was like towards the end, like I saw the writing on the wall, is I got the names of all the guests. And again, it takes a little bit. It takes, they're getting all the names, spelling and all that stuff, name, phone number, and they wanted a date. And I'm looking at the calendar. I see the date, on the calendar available. Hey, we want this date. They go, click. Date's not available. So while they're looking it up, I'm refreshing and I see that it's gone. So it's like, let me go to the next date. Like right before, or is right after, I don't remember. There's the one right after. Let's do it. Click. It's gone. Panic starts setting in. So, and again, there's a little bit of time. It's not going as fast as I'm speaking, but let's pick another day. Like you start encroaching closer and closer, and days are just getting swiped from under me. And there's nothing. And again, that's when you start seeing that here's the limitation of, those guests and their dates. And it was kind of like, okay, how much more time do I keep holding, like keep pushing? And so you have to kind of make that call of like, I have to move to the next, room to try to get at least those, like if they have more open availability.
Right.
And that was like the hardest call, because it's like you gave this range, even if it was a big range, but the dates were just going that fast. And it was literally refresh, and it was dates were gone. And I think that was like the hardest thing, just seeing them go that fast.
Yeah. It was like gut wrenching, because I experienced the same thing too. I'm trying to book people and they're like, or it could be like a big group where it's like, they have this big friend group and they want 2 cabins. They want to pack it out. I'm like, I need 2 cabins. How do I get 2 cabins when the dates are literally disappearing within seconds? Yeah. Or, we had one that they have a baby due in July. And so they're very limited in what they could do. And August and September are sold out. And it's like, it was so hard to go through, and I didn't anticipate. I
And-
didn't
and
anticipate that happening.
I think the thing is like, I think we were all naive to think that it was not going to get sold out in such a short amount of time. Because I think Disney had brought on all this extra help,
Yeah.
not just for that day,
All weekend.
all weekend. Us thinking that, hey, we're going to commit all this time to do this.
I thought I was going to be on the phone for 4 or 5 days straight. I truly
Yeah.
thought I was not leaving my office and I was going to be working. How long was the phone lines open even? 16 hours?
Yeah,
I thought I was going to be on the phone for 16 hours a day for 4 to 5 days straight.
Yeah.
I fully anticipated that.
But no, truly, like we thought we were going to be nonstop. For the, week.
Yeah.
And it was 8 hours.
Gone in 8 hours. And if I had
4 months.
If I had even, it has never done that though. And that's what it's never sold out that fast.
Yeah.
When it first opened, those first 5 months took days to sell out. If I had even the wildest thought that it would have gone that fast, I would have said, let me know if you will take anything. Because towards the end of it, all that was available was like, it opened up on, the booking window was Friday, May 26th, was the May 29th voyage, which was 3 days away, and the May 31st voyage.
And I think the thing is like, and I know that was like something that you were beating yourself up about. You're like, I could have got those days. But I think the hard part is you're expecting that person to pay. You're still paying a Starcruiser voyage amount. And I think that's the,
yeah, there were no discounts.
There was no discounts.
Nothing.
They were not, they were like, they pulled pulled nothing back, or they didn't hold anything back. You paid full price, and you're expecting, someone to put down that amount of money and anticipate that they're going to be there. Hopefully it was somebody in Florida that they could get there quick, but I think that was like the hardest, and again, I know you're beating yourself about it, but it was, though, that's a tough call to just say, you know what, next, 3 days from now, that's the last voyage that they have, that's all they had.
And I booked multiple people that are going within the next like 2 weeks. And then I booked people, that are about to hit their 30-day mark, but like booking those people within 30 days, they have to pay full price. They're fully locked in. I'm charging their card and they don't even know what date they're going on Starcruiser until I send them that email and say, this date, this confirmation number, more information to come.
So,
because it was going so fast, I couldn't tell people. I wasn't able to tell people as soon as I booked them to move to the next one. Like there was no time because we're scrambling.
Because again, you have that short window of like, hey, I need to just keep going. You're not going to stop and like, let me do the paperwork. Like we were like, no, let's get to the next person.
Get as many people booked and let's deal with that. On our next time of waiting on hold for hours, I'll knock my paperwork out.
I knew I knew it was over the last time I called because I got right through. And you get, as soon as you get right through, you're kind of like, okay, I don't think there's anything left.
Yeah.
You get one, 2 people, and then you get to that last one of like, is there anything? You start just kind of picking days, and there's not, and then you see the calendar. It's not even visible because it's packed out, or it's sold out.
Yeah.
So it's that's the one where you're like, this is it. This is the last one.
Yeah. So when I stopped, there was the May 29th and May 31st available, and I very quickly sent out emails to the people that we had gotten booked, and I said, here's your confirmation and your date. I'll send you more details later. And then I had to take my list of people I didn't get, and I typed up an email, and I just said, I just apologized like profusely because yesterday was like one of the darkest days for me. Like I feel like I let so many people down. Like I personally let so many people down, and it just broke me. Like I was, you had to live with me yesterday. I was so bummed. I think I cried like I took a nap so I could stop crying for a while. Like you put on Return of the Jedi and I was like, I just want to go lay in bed for a bit. But even when I sent that email out and I said the only, as I'm writing this email, the only voyage dates available are the May 29th and May 31st. And I had people email me back immediately and were like, I'll take it. And I called back in and they were gone.
Yeah.
And like there was nothing I could do. And it just, there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And it just, it breaks my heart.
Yeah, I mean, and that was again, we could, woulda, coulda, shoulda type of thing. But I think the thing is like the fact that they were closing, there was a lot more attention to it, and everybody wanted to get in one last time. Right. Or get in the first time.
Or for the first time. It could have been people that were saving up to go a year or 2 or 3 years from now when their kids are old enough, or after their wedding, or all these reasons why now was not the time.
Yeah. And
they're forced to move that up. And that's a big investment to make.
And I think that's kind of my final thought on it is I really hope that we're all booked, like they're all booked. Starcruiser's booked to the end, filled with people that want to say goodbye, want to see it because they wanted to see it. They were, that maybe it got pushed up, but they're there because they're happy. And there's not people there that are wanting to see it because it failed.
Right.
Or they want to see like, oh, this is what failed.
Buy all the merch to resell it.
Just for like be there and love the Halcyon. Like that all the other people that have gone have. That's what I'm hoping for. That's the only thing that I would want.
Yeah, I hope that too. And I just, ever since the news came out, like I've just been gutted for all of the people that work on Starcruiser, because this is, I joke and I do, like from a distance, I eat, sleep, and breathe Starcruiser. Is that right? Yeah, something like, I love Starcruiser. Yeah. It's everything I do. But the people that actually like work on Starcruiser and work at Disney on Starcruiser, like the cast, the crew, the people behind the scenes, and then like I like to call them my coworkers, like the Starcruiser specialists. When you call in your booking, even the recruits that they brought in, the reinforcements they brought in all weekend to help with these rebookings, like they were put in a situation where they didn't know what they were doing, and they're having to try to fight the same fight that we're doing on our side, on their side. But the Starcruiser specialists, they truly were specialists, and like they all loved Starcruiser, and they would talk to you about it at length, and they felt like my coworkers, because when you are a travel agent, you don't have a lot of people, like you don't go into an office and like hang out with your office buddies. They were my coworkers, and it's been such a joy to talk to them for the last year and a half, and I'm like so bummed that I'm not going to get to talk to them anymore, like on the regular.
And it's funny because it kind of reminds me of just like the hotline type, like the that's what it, because you don't know who they are, right? They're just names. They're just a person, the name, and you recognize the name that they use,
that they give me,
and
I feel like they're my friends.
Yeah, so
they're like that crazy lady.
But yeah, it's just one of those things that you've made friends with them, and just over the phone, and hey, how's it going? I'm calling back again.
Yeah, it's me. Sorry, we've got 20 things to do for this hour.
So, but yeah, it's I feel for you. I know, like I said, you've been doing this again for the last 2 years, calling in constantly and talking to these specialists and stuff. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm
hopefully in they'll get they'll find homes in other places, and you could call them for Disney resorts stuff, and cruises or something.
Yeah, they'll be like, hey, remember me from 5 years ago? Yeah, I mean, I've been through all of the stages of grief, and back and forward through them. Like there's times where I'm just like I'm like, it is what it is. I've accepted it. Let's just move on and let's make the best of a bad situation. And then the next minute, I'm like, I can't believe this. So I think it's going to take me a while. I think I've accepted it. So maybe I'm still in denial, which is the first phase. And hopefully by the time the end of September comes, I have accepted it. And I think the big thing is that we all just take away from this, not that the experience is ending, but all of the things that this experience has given us, because that's really all we can do. We gotta make lemonade with the lemons we've been given. So I think that's a good place to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. And if you noticed, my shirt says Forever on it with the Halcyon logo. It was designed by our friends over at HE Creative, and all proceeds are going to Make-A-Wish. So if you're interested in picking up your own, we will put a link in the description.
Until next time.